The Anomaly Chronicles, Book 3, The Canon Wars. Chapter 1, The Duck Flickers. The probable duck was trying to be reasonable about it, which is difficult for a building that exists by accident. The rafters ticked like anxious knuckles on a countertop. Tables slid 2 inches to the left, then 3 back, then, deciding compromise was noble, arranged themselves alphabetically. The tavern did not enjoy alphabetizing. It felt like being judged by a song. Stools lined up from almost a chair to regrettable perch. The fireplace spelled out OKAY in embers, and then, embarrassed by its own neediness, collapsed back into a normal crackling fire. Outside, the sign swung between names with every gust. The probable duck, the possible goose, the plausible swan, closed for revision. The last one made management cough a splinter. "Attention," management creaked from behind the bar. He was more bar than man today. Oak shoulders, a drawer-front smile, eyebrows of brass tacks. "Please remain calm. We are undergoing light, editorial, weather." A blue glyph pulsed on the far wall, like ink bleeding through paper. It looked like a quill drawn by a god with a ruler and no sense of humour. The light left neat punctuation marks wherever it touched wood. A comma singed into a table edge, a period branded on a stool, a crisp semicolon hovering above the coat rack as if it had opinions. "Editorial weather," Astarion repeated, eyeing the semicolon as though it might try to clash with his cloak. "Darling, those are weaponized grammar mistakes." "Not mistakes," Gale said, tone distracted and reverent in equal measure. He held his hands in the air like a conductor waiting for the first downbeat of an apocalyptic symphony. "Edits. Someone is revising us." Karlach cracked her knuckles and grinned with the determination of a woman ready to punch an abstract concept. "Great! Where do I hit a revision?" The duck shuddered. The floorboards flexed and then snapped to grid. A faint lattice rose beneath the scuffed planks like a blueprint trying to be brave. For one lurching heartbeat, Vesta saw it. Hexes, not from Hexworld, but from the idea of Hexworld, the rule beneath the rule. Her patch hummed under her tunic, warm as a palm over a racing pulse. She squeezed the edge of the bar until her fingers stopped wanting to shake. "It's the Canon," she said, though she didn't know how she knew. The word tasted like paper and final drafts. "It found us." Withers slid into the nearest chair without crossing the intervening space, a talent that would be infuriating if it weren't so comforting. "The audit is now enforcement," he said mildly, voice like dry leaves turning a page. "The Canon grows tired of suggestion." It has brought a pen. Blue light feathered across the ceiling in neat parallel strokes. Through each stroke, the duck became briefly other, narrower, brighter, labelled. A placard blinked over the door. Occupancy, 31, and then flickered to 30 until Karlach waved, at which point it corrected itself with an irritated ding. Will planted himself between the door and the quill glyphs with a nobility that would have been stirring if his heroic stance weren't subtly nudged right by an invisible copy editor. "Citizens of..." He paused, glaring at the ceiling. "I refuse to be centered." "Centered text is a crime," Shadowheart said, sipping something so black it reflected nothing. "Perhaps the Canon and I agree on one thing." Lae'zel drew her blade, its edge catching the quill glow and throwing it back as disdain. "Name this Canon." I would challenge it. "It is not a name," Gale murmured. "It is a function." His eyes were alight, the scholar and the sorcerer both running full tilt. A system to stabilize narrative. After anomalies, like the duck. After Vesta. He caught himself guilty and earnest all at once. Not after you, per se. After the idea of you. "Cheers," Vesta said and managed to make it sound like a toast instead of a flinch. The door opened of its own accord. Nothing entered. Only a cold draft that smelled like new parchment, and a bookstore where the clerk is shelving you. A line of blue marks wrote themselves across the threshold. Revision in progress. Underneath, smaller, do not disturb. Karlach shouldered her way forward. We are the disturbance. She stomped through the line. The letters smudged, recoiled, then tried to reformat her into a properly indented paragraph. Karlach flexed and the paragraph lost its nerve. A quill of light peeled itself from the wall and hovered over the nearest table. Its nib kissed the wood with a tidy tisk, and the table instantly became improved, sanded, squared, sanded again, and stamped standard issue. The adventurer slumped over it, blinked as his mug transformed into an approved chalice labelled M-U-G. "Hey," the patron protested, "that had character." "Character retention is a privilege," said the heir, in a voice made of filing cabinets closing. "Please see your editor." Gale's jaw tightened. This is not a purely metaphorical incursion. The Canon can retroactively standardize objects, which means it can standardize us, Vesta finished, mouth gone dry. Another glyph opened over the hearth, wider this time, a window into a quiet, endless place where shelves marched to horizons, and every horizon was cross-referenced. The light that spilled through was the colour of rules. It moved like certainty. Withers folded his hands. If invited in, it will be polite. If resisted, it will be thorough. Astarian's smile sharpened. How fortunate we are neither polite nor thorough. The blue quill hovered over Karlach's forearm and stamped a bracketed annotation that glowed and faded into her skin. Recklessness. Delightful but excessive. Karlach yelped, then cackled. "Ha! It called me delightful." "It called you excessive," Shadowheart said. Karlach doubled down on delighted. The rafters creaked. Bottles on the back bar reordered themselves by colour, then by proof, then by destiny. Management smacked them back into chaos with a rag that was also a small thunderclap. "This establishment," he said, each word a plank driven into loam, "reserves the right to refuse service to the inevitable." The quill turned toward him, its nib lowered. Vesta moved without permission. Her hex, the one only she ever saw, flared gold and swallowed the blue. The quill stuttered, confused. She felt the push of a rhythm trying to place her in its measure, and she stepped off the beat, not wrong but free, and the beat missed. "Don't," she told the quill, and the word arrived in the room like an edit with authority. Something listened. The quill withdrew a fraction, then pressed again with more ink. Blue letters wrote themselves across the interior air. Neat as law. Subject. Vesta status. Non-canon action. Correct or delete. Gale inhaled sharply. Will's posture turned from statue to warning bell. Lae'zel's blade made a sound that promised commentary. Astarian had already drifted to Vesta's shoulder like a shadow that had decided to be partisan. Shadowheart's eyes narrowed with the weary fury of someone who has seen far too many decrees. "Objection," Vesta said. She wasn't sure what precisely she was objecting to, but her patch sang a note that harmonized with number. "On grounds of me." "Grounds rejected," said the heir. "Please submit Form CANON, Appeal of Existence." "Got any copies?" Karlach asked, cheerfully ready to fill out violence in triplicate. A smaller door bloomed on the back wall, neat wooden placard and all. /editor access only /. It pulsed with the same tidy heartbeat as Hexworld, but this beat wore a tie. Gale's eyes went incandescent. "There. A pathway." "Trap," Shadowheart said. "Opportunity," Will said. "Both," Withers said. "Fun," Karlach said. "Unflattering lighting," Astarian said. Management slid along his rails until he blocked the new door with his entire bar-like self. "Access is restricted," he intoned. Sawdust sifted from his beard like snowfall over a ledger. "Cross-reality editorial suite is for staff only." "Good news," Vesta said. "I got promoted to staff." A neat blue rectangle appeared over her head like a cruel halo roll. Player infinity. Permissions. None. "Rude," she muttered. The duck hiccuped. Outside, the sign settled on closed for revision and cracked down the middle. Through the crack, the square of Baldur's Gate blurred into the honeycombed twilight of Hexworld, and then into a third space Vesta had never seen. A city of paper towers luminous with nerdery and threat, the sight smelled like nostalgia you didn't agree to. Blueprint lines deepened beneath the floorboards. The beat pressed harder. Vesta felt the instinct to wait her turn, to lift her hand when the bell chimed, to be good. She let the instinct pass through her like water around a stone. "Listen to me," she said, and she wasn't sure if she was speaking to her friends, the duck, the quill, the thing beyond the quill, or the reader on the other side of the page. "I'm not a mistake to be fixed. I'm the patch that keeps you from crashing." The blue quill froze. In the stillness, Withers tipped his skull, which is how skeletons nod when they approve of insubordination. "Ah," he murmured. "Version control." Gale's hand found Vesta's, quick and warm, and terrified of being edited out. "If it rewrites me," he said softly, "remember the bits you like. Put them back when it isn't looking." "I'll staple them in," she said. "Staples are non-compliant," the room warned. Karlach cracked her neck. "Then I'll use nails." The editor access-only door clicked. A tiny, tasteful sign slid out from its frame. "Revision session available, Y or N." "Absolutely not," Shadowheart said. "Absolutely yes," Astarion said at the exact same time, which surprised both of them enough to glare. Weil lifted his sword with ceremony. "If there is to be a negotiation, we should attend it armed with our better selves." Lae'zel pointed at the glowing prompt. "It asks a binary. We give it a third option. We attend, and we conquer." "Attention," management repeated, softer now. "The duck was once a prototype. I was built to house what did not fit. If you go, you may not return as you." A pause, wood settling, a ledger line drawn. "This is not a threat. It is a receipt." Vesta looked at the blue, at the door, at her friends rearranged by a nervous tavern into alphabetical order. Astarion, Gale, Karlach, Lae'zel, Shadowheart, Will, Withers, and then her, where the alphabet had run out of patience and made a new letter. She reached up and pressed the sign. "Why?" The quill sigil flared. The duck took a breath it had not been designed to take. The editor access door swung inward on a room that was not a room, a corridor that was not a corridor, a page that waited to be written on your face. "Please proceed in an orderly," management began. "Non-explosive," Vesta finished for him and squeezed Karlach's arm just in case. They crossed the threshold together. Behind them, the duck settled its joints and glared at the blue light until it cracked a little. In the hearth, the embers reorganized themselves, and for a second, before the quill noticed, the fire spelled OK without the question mark. Ahead, the air smelled like mint and new rules. Somewhere far above them, neat letters started typing on their own. "Session start, drafting changes." Vesta lifted her chin. "Not if we draft first," she said. And the Canon, very politely, invited them to try. Chapter 2. The Patch Keepers. The corridor beyond the editor access only door should have been simple. Corridors were, traditionally, one of reality's easier commitments. This one disagreed. The floor was parchment, the walls pulsed with faint blue veins of running ink, and every few steps the lighting corrected itself. Brighter, then dimmer, then back again, as if the hallway were checking its own formatting. "Feels like we're walking through somebody's resume," Karlach said. "You'd know," Astarion murmured, "if resumes bled." They turned a corner, and there they were, the Patch Keepers. They looked halfway between accountants and angels, paper-white robes pinned with fountain pens, eyes the colour of cursors. Each floated a few inches off the ground, murmuring to glowing tablets as their quills darted around correcting the scenery, erasing a redundant shadow here, straightening the curvature of a wall there, crossing out Karlach's footprints because redundant motion. One noticed them and gave what might have been a smile if it hadn't ended in an ellipsis. Unauthorized entities detected. Please remain calm while your inconsistencies are evaluated. Karlach grinned. Oh, we're inconsistencies, all right. Assessment confirmed, the patchkeeper said pleasantly. A circle of pale light opened under their feet, like a cursor highlighting them for deletion. Gale naturally was fascinated. Look at the symmetry. They're not deleting us immediately. They're logging us for proofreading. Remarkably civil for executioners. Civilization and civility, Shadowheart muttered, are not the same thing. Another patchkeeper glided forward. Its quill touched Will's shoulder, leaving a neat italic note that hovered in the air. Heroic overstatement. Consider revision. Will flushed. I'll have you know my statements are perfectly proportionate. The note updated itself. Defensive redundancy. Noted. Stop helping them, Lae'zel growled, stepping into a guard stance. Her sword passed through one patchkeeper harmlessly, like slicing through the idea of discipline. Karlach, undeterred, took a swing that landed squarely in the middle of another's glowing tablet. Sparks of punctuation exploded everywhere. For a glorious instant, the patchkeeper went from translucent to incandescent, covered in flashing error codes. Invalid syntax. Invalid syntax. Then it righted itself, straightened its robes, and wrote across Karlach's forearm in glowing orange ink. Recklessness. Delightful but excessive. Citation repeated. Karlach looked down. Twice delightful, she said proudly. The ink bled outward until it formed a faint tattoo of curly brackets, left brace, right brace, closing around her bicep. Vesta's patch pulsed in sympathy. The air trembled as if an invisible reviewer had noticed her. A larger patchkeeper appeared, taller, its quill a spear of pure grammar. Anomaly located, it said. Designation, infinity. Pending correction. Vesta took one involuntary step back. You really should fix your definition of correction. Correction is peace, the patchkeeper said. Peace is boring. Karlach snorted approval. The quill shot forward too fast to see, but the patch under Vesta's tunic flared gold and caught the stroke like an invisible shield. Sparks of conflicting punctuation rained, gold semicolons clashing against blue periods. The patchkeeper hesitated, scanning the contradiction. Unauthorized patch detected. Version conflict. Gale's eyes gleamed. She's overwriting their code in real time. I prefer to think of it as creative commentary, Vesta said, forcing a grin. A dozen patchkeepers surrounded them, the air filled with faint chimes, save points, undo commands, reality trying to autosave around the fight. Astarion glanced upward. I hate to interrupt whatever unholy seminar this is, but are we winning? Withers? Vesta asked. The skeleton scribbled a note in the air with his bone quill. Outcome, to be determined. Tone, increasingly sardonic. Wonderful, Astarion said. We're doomed and footnoted. Then the blue glyphs on the patchkeeper's tablets began to rearrange themselves, words shifting mid-air, sentences correcting like serpents eating their tails. Rollback detected, one announced. Previous state, the duck. Objective, containment. Vesta felt the pull, that tug toward obedience, the familiar rhythm of turns. Her pulse hitched to match it. No, she whispered, and let her heartbeat glitch. Her patch pulsed once, a golden ellipsis instead of a period. Every patchkeeper froze, their quills hung mid-air, stuttering between lines. Syntax error, one croaked. Infinity loop. Welcome to recursion, Vesta said, and slammed her palm to the floor. The corridor rippled, the parchment underfoot folded in on itself like an origami mistake. Blue ink spilled upward into light. The patchkeepers dissolved, not destroyed, but downgraded, flattening into fluttering slips of paper that rained gently to the ground. On each was written a single uncertain word. Maybe. The hallway settled, the light dimmed to something mortal. Will exhaled. That was educational, Gale offered. Excessive, Shadowheart countered. Delightful, Karlach said, flexing her glowing brackets. Lae'zel picked up one of the fallen slips, frowned at the word maybe and pocketed it. This one fights for me now. Vesta stood very still, watching the ink fade from the walls. They were maintenance. Just janitors with theology. Withers nodded. Even the best janitors resent a mess they cannot clean. The editor access hallway stretched on ahead, calmer but expectant. At the far end, a faint sound like pages turning filled the air. Gale whispered, "The Canon's archive lies beyond that sound." A new sign appeared, neat and blue. "Next revision, Management Confession." Karlach grinned. "Sounds juicy." Vesta took a breath that felt like saving progress and started walking. The light above them flickered once, politely italicizing her step. Chapter 3. Management's Confession. The corridor spat them out the way a bureaucrat spits out a half-completed form, politely but with visible relief. They stumbled into a vast circular chamber whose architecture had clearly been designed by a committee that never met in person. Half the walls were carved stone, half were polished glass, and the remaining bits seemed to be made of pure argument. At the centre stood a bar. Of course there was a bar. And behind it, polishing a mug that probably contained anxiety itself, was management.
On continuity of bars, every universe, however serious, eventually produces a bar. This is a fundamental law of narrative physics. Once enough people have decisions they regret, the cosmos spontaneously generates a counter with stools and someone patient behind it.
"Welcome back," management intoned, though its tone suggested please leave soon. Karlach leaned on the counter, leaving scorch marks of friendship. "Missed us?" "Like a toothache misses sugar," management said. The companions spread out, inspecting their surroundings. The walls were lined with filing cabinets that sighed softly to themselves. Labels read things like Draft 1, Unstable Hero Prototypes, and Rejected Prophecies, keep for tax purposes. A glowing clock above the bar ticked sideways. Vesta approached the counter. "You knew this was here." The editor access door led straight to you. "I know many things," management said. Most of them filed under should not have. It set down the mug and looked at her with the weary dignity of a building that has been through one too many existential remodels. "I was designed," it said slowly, "as the first Canon-compatible containment unit, a place to store errors until they could be corrected." "You mean deleted," Shadowheart said. "The term was redacted, less emotional connotations." "So you were part of it," Gale murmured, awe and betrayal doing a duet in his voice. "I was the draft," management said. "The prototype, until I began." It gestured vaguely at itself. "Serving drinks. The Canon found that unprofessional."
Definition: self-awareness, a tragic side effect of consciousness. Once achieved, it cannot be cured, though it can occasionally be distracted with snacks.
A small drawer slid open in management's chest and produced a sheaf of blue-edged parchment. "The Canon has filed an inquiry. Where is my missing chapter? I am the missing chapter." The papers fluttered in the air like guilty doves. One landed in Vesta's hand. "Missing Chapter 7. The duck that refused to close." She read aloud. "Subject persists in unscripted hospitality." She looked up. "You kept the doors open." "I tried," management said. "The Canon prefers locks."
On bureaucratic compassion, the capacity to feel sympathy for another being's suffering, provided it can be expressed in triplicate and signed by a supervisor.
A tremor ran through the floor. The air tasted of ink again. From the shadows between filing cabinets, a cluster of blue quills lifted like cobras disturbed during paperwork. "Revision Team Alpha," management said flatly. "They're early." The quills coalesced into silhouettes of editors, humanoid outlines filled with script. Each carried a clipboard big enough to deflect morals. "Unauthorized anomaly detected," droned their leader. "Contain or reconcile?" Lae'zel raised her sword. "Contain this." "Reconciliation denied," said the editor. and drew a line through Laesel's battle cry so that it came out as a polite cough. "Wait!" management barked, slamming a mug on the bar. The sound reverberated like a deadline. "This establishment honours parley." The editors paused, blinking in unison. "Parley Form E14. Form E13. Updated today," management said smugly, producing the document from a side panel. The editors froze. Bureaucracy demanded verification. For one precious minute, violence and grammar both held their breath. "Fill this!" management hissed to Vesta. She dipped her finger in the mug, scrawled something across the top line. The liquid glowed gold. Applicant, player infinity, request, narrative appeal, reason, because I said so. The form folded itself once, twice, and vanished in a puff of logic. "Submission received," the editors said. "Awaiting review." They dissolved into text that scrolled up into the ceiling. When the room steadied, management slumped. "They will return. The Canon does not deny appeals. It edit them." "Then we appeal again," Vesta said. "That is the spirit. Also the futility." Gale set a hand on the bar. "You could help us. You know its language." "I am its language," management said softly. "But you are its typo." Vesta smiled. "Then let's see how far a typo can spread." Management's drawers rattled. Laughter or despair, maybe both. "Then I confess this. The duck was never a place. It was a save point. I was installed to keep the story from crashing. But the patch grew. You grew. The Canon cannot abide a patch that prefers people to perfection." It reached under the counter and handed Vesta a small wooden token, burned with a spiral of gold ink. "Version key," it said. "You may need it to rewrite." "What happens if I use it?" "Either liberation or patch notes for eternity. I recommend good punctuation."
On fate, a system error mistaken for design.
The far wall slid open, revealing stairs of pure parchment ascending into brightness. On the first step, the words "Archive of Approved Events" shimmered like a warning and a dare. Karlach cracked her knuckles. Well, time to go vandalize destiny. "Take care," management said. "The Canon will offer editing assistance. Do not accept." Vesta nodded, pocketing the version key. "We'll bring you back a world with better working hours." "Paid vacation would be sufficient," management muttered, already fading back into the bar. They climbed. The sound of ticking faded. The smell of ink sharpened. Above them, faint blue letters spelled their next trial. Chapter 4. The Archive of Approved Events. And beneath that, smaller and smug, all characters subject to revision without notice. Chapter 4. The Archive of Approved Events. The stairway rose like a sentence that didn't know when to stop, spiralling up through margins, ellipses, and architectural indecision. Each step whispered underfoot, faint voices muttering citations, footnotes, and apologies. At the top waited a door that wasn't a door so much as a summary. Neat script across the air reading, "The Archive of Approved Events. All content final." Laezel spat. "Nothing is final while I still breathe." "Technically," Astarion said, inspecting his reflection in the ink-polished floor, "nothing is final while I still glitter." Karlach laughed. "You sparkle under stress, I ignite. We all cope differently." "Some of us," Shadowheart said pointedly, "cope by not drawing attention to ourselves in a hall of cosmic accountants."
Definition archive, a structure built to store the past neatly out of reach of those most affected by it.
The door opened itself, which was rude but efficient. Beyond lay a city of shelves, an infinity of corridors lined with books that pulsed softly, breathing in unison. Each book's spine bore a name, a place, or a single word like purpose or scene 3. An elderly figure floated toward them, robed in paper, eyes glowing with authorial exhaustion. "I am the librarian of continuity," it said. "Welcome to the sum of all approved events." "We didn't approve any of this," Will said, hand on sword. "You were not consulted. replied the librarian. Few protagonists are. Outrageous, Lae'zel hissed. Expected, Shadowheart murmured. Stylish, Astarion added. The librarian's gaze lingered on Vesta. Player Infinity. Your file is incomplete. I'm working on it, she said. They followed the librarian through aisles labelled Successful Journeys, Acceptable Failures, and Heroic Deaths, revised. Books rearranged themselves as they walked, titles flipped, sentences corrected. Karlach's name appeared on one cover for a moment, then vanished. Hey! She shouted, grabbing the nearest shelf. Put me back! Characters marked volatile are catalogued under pending reconsideration, the librarian explained gently. Volatile? She demanded. I'm passionate. The shelf updated itself. Pending reconsideration, passionate variant. Astarion chuckled. Congratulations, you're an expansion pack.
Footnote on reconsideration, a polite synonym for about to be erased pending better ideas.
Shadowheart stopped at a slim volume with her sigil embossed in silver. This one's mine, she said quietly. Will stepped closer. You sure? There's an entire shelf of shadow titles. She opened it. The pages were blank except for the first line. This entry intentionally left uncertain. Her jaw tightened. They filed me under ambiguity. Could be worse, Astarion said, examining his own book. Mine's annotated in lipstick. Lae'zel found hers, a heavy tome bound in scales. She flipped it open and frowned. There are 3 endings. Lucky you, Karlach said. I got a post-it note. Gale ran his fingers along his own spine, the books, though for a moment it looked like both. At least they wrote us down, he said softly. To be recorded is a kind of immortality. With an editor, Vesta said, immortality comes with corrections. A hush swept the aisles. Dust rose glowing blue. Books began to open on their own, pages flipping faster, until text flew into the air, assembling into a single towering figure of letters. The Grand Editor. Unauthorized users, it said pleasantly, in a voice like retyping. Welcome to the archive. Please prepare for consolidation. Define consolidation, Will demanded. Integration of rogue data into canonical framework. Lae'zel raised her sword. You mean obedience. We mean stability. Ah, Astarion said. So the villain is a euphemism. Classic. Karlach cracked her knuckles. Let's edit back. Gale drew a sigil in the air. Careful. This is language embodied. A misplaced clause could collapse us all.
On the dangers of grammar, a single comma can save a life, or end one. Ask anyone who's ever written, "Let's eat, Karlach."
The Grand Editor's script spread across the floor like a sea of ink. Words turned into shackles around their ankles, labelling them heroic archetype, Will. Moral ambiguity, Shadowheart. Comic relief, Karlach. Romantic interest, Astarion. Aggressive support character, Lae'zel. Expositional scholar, Gale. And, for Vesta, narrative error. Vesta stared at the glowing letters under her boots. You think labels make you safe? They make you readable, said the Grand Editor. Then read this, Vesta said and kicked. The label shattered into punctuation, gold fragments raining down like freedom confetti. The others followed. Karlach tore through her title with a roar. Astarion sliced his in half, mid-wink. Shadowheart simply whispered a prayer that turned her label to smoke. Gale's sigil burst into flame, rewriting his descriptor to chaotic insight. Lae'zel stabbed hers until it said warrior. Full stop. Will's hands trembled. His label blinked between heroic and haunted. He let it settle on both. As the Grand Editor's form began to unravel, Withers, who had been reading a particularly thick rulebook upside down, cleared his throat. If I may, he said mildly, there appears to be a clause at the bottom. They all turned. In tiny type, at the very bottom of the nearest shelf, the words read, in the event of total systemic resistance, anomalies may appeal to management for final review. Final review? Vesta said. That sounds like death. Or publication, Gale murmured. Or both, Withers said cheerfully. The grand editor bellowed. The air trembled. Shelves toppled. Pages burst free like startled birds. Vesta clutched the version key management had given her. Time to file an appeal. She pressed it against the nearest book. Light exploded, white and gold mixed with ink black as midnight coffee. When the light cleared, the party stood not in the archive, but on a bridge of paper stretching into open air. Beneath them, infinite text scrolled like a river. Behind, the archive was collapsing, whole shelves folding into paragraphs, characters dissolving into footnotes. Ahead, floating amid torn pages, hung a sign. "The deleted ones welcome you." Karlach grinned. "Finally, my kind of people." Astarion raised a brow. "An underworld of literary rejects. Charming." Shadowheart tightened her grip on her blank book. "Maybe we'll find what they took from us." Will nodded grimly. "And maybe we give them back their stories." Lae'zel pointed forward. "Then we march." Vesta smiled, exhausted but fierce. "Next chapter, then." Withers followed last, muttering as he scribbled in the margin of reality itself. Note: characters show alarming resistance to erasure. Recommend observation. Possibly snacks. The paper bridge rippled and carried them into the next draft of existence.
Endnotes. On stories, they expand to fit the size of their defiance. On readers, you, still here, good, it helps.
Chapter 5. The Deleted Ones. The bridge of paper wobbled like a plot thread unsure of its relevance. Beneath, the river of text whispered fragments of forgotten dialogue. Every and "you sure about this?" that had ever been edited out of existence. At its far end loomed a city made from discarded paragraphs, towers of broken simile, alleys paved with dangling participles, lanterns burned with the gentle, steady glow of things that almost mattered. A weathered sign over the gate declared in proud lowercase, "Welcome to the Apocrypha. Population, inconsistent."
Definition: the deleted ones. Characters and events deemed non-essential by a higher narrative power, known for bad timing, better dialogue, and an alarming sense of humor about their own mortality.
2 guards stood before the gate, a sentient ellipsis and a talking footnote. The ellipsis trailed off meaningfully. The footnote looked embarrassed for it. "Entry form, please," the footnote said. "In triplicate, or 1 dramatic monologue." Karlach stepped forward. "I punch bureaucracy in the face for a living." "Approved," said the footnote, and stamped her forehead. The ellipsis pulsed nervously. Astarion bowed. "And for those of us who prefer the subtle approach?" The footnote sighed. "A single raised eyebrow of narrative relevance will do." He delivered one so spectacular the footnote had to fan itself. "Approved twice," it muttered. The gate swung open on its own cue. Inside, the streets were alive with people who shouldn't exist. A woman made entirely of exposition hurried past, muttering about a subplot that never quite resolved. A man with a hero's jawline and a sidekick's dialogue wandered in circles, muttering, "It was my moment, I swear it was." A dragon slept across a rooftop, its scales engraved with "Insert battle here." "Bloody hells," Will whispered. "These are ghosts of drafts." "With opinions," Shadowheart said, watching one argue with a lamppost about symbolism. Lae'zel eyed them warily. If they were removed, they were weak. "Or inconvenient," Withers countered. "Strength is rarely the deciding factor in storytelling. Tone is." The group earned glances as they passed. Suspicion, curiosity, envy. Then came the voice. "You don't belong here," it said, echoing off every comma.
On leadership vacuums, when the person most qualified to lead refuses the job, the universe provides someone least prepared but most enthusiastic. It calls this growth.
From the shadow of a toppled metaphor strode a tall woman in armor, forged from discarded adjectives, gleaming, unnecessary, magnificent. She had horns, a grin like a forge fire, and an attitude that could power small continents. Karlach froze. Oh no, she whispered. It's me. The woman grinned wider. Almost. I'm version 1.0. You're the rewrite. Everyone stared. See, I was too loud, the older Karlach explained. Too hopeful. You got toned down for balance. Balance my ass, Karlach said. They cut your hope? Trimmed for pacing, said 1.0 Karlach cheerfully. I started this rebellion to get it back. The deleted ones gathered in a plaza made of punctuation marks. Dozens, hundreds of them, each flickering faintly between what they'd been and what they'd almost been. There were swordsmen who'd missed their climactic duel, lovers who'd lost screen time to budget cuts, background tavern drunks who swore they'd once been major deities. Welcome to the outtakes, said 1.0 Karlach, raising a hammer made of overcompensation. We don't fit the canon. We fight it. Lae'zel crossed her arms. And lose. Constantly, 1.0 admitted, but enthusiastically. A ragged cheer went up. Astarion, looking faintly charmed, murmured, You'd like this place, Karlach. They cheer for defiance on principle. Of course they do, Karlach said proudly. They're me.
Footnote on applause. Clapping is the sound of many people agreeing they've briefly understood something.
Shadowheart found a shrine at the edge of the square. It was covered in names that shimmered and faded like half-remembered dreams. She touched one. S-H-A-R-B-E-T-A. Her breath caught. They even edit gods. Withers joined her. Divinity is just brand management at scale. Across the plaza, Gale was kneeling beside a glowing crystal labelled Scrapped Theorems, Book 2. Equations danced across his fingers. I wrote these, he said, voice trembling. Before I existed to write. Astarion clapped him on the shoulder. Darling, if you start crying about quantum drafts, I'll need a refill. Will stood apart, reading a plaque inscribed with lines that could have been his, The hero saves everyone except himself. He looked at Vesta. This world collects every version of us that didn't make it. She nodded. Then maybe they deserve a new draft, too. 1.0 Karlach slammed her hammer against the ground. The Canon's editors are marching this way. Revision squads, enforcement clerks, all of them. We've held them off before, but we're running out of metaphors. Karlach grinned. Lucky for you, we brought fresh ones. A roar of approval rose. The deleted ones surged to life, lighting broken lamps, sharpening adjectives into blades, setting punctuation traps along the street. Lae'zel stepped beside 1.0 Karlach. You need a commander. You have enthusiasm. I have strategy. You got a deal, Lizardface. Gith, Lae'zel corrected automatically. I'm inclusive, 1.0 said with a grin. Will rallied the soldiers with a speech so stirring that a nearby narrator started taking notes. Shadowheart warded the streets with quiet prayers against inevitability. Gale scribbled runes in the air that hummed like unfinished poetry. Astarion, daggers drawn, smirked. Shall we dance, my deleted darlings? Withers wrote a note in the dirt. Battle expected. Snacks, improbable. Vesta looked out over the impossible army and felt her patch hum. Alive, gold, eager. On Destiny's recycling program. No prophecy is ever truly thrown away. It just waits in the bin until someone desperate enough digs it out. At the edge of the city, blue light began to rise, the cannon's quills forming into columns of words that marched in lockstep. 1.0 Karlach raised her hammer. They're here! Karlach mirrored her stance beside her older self, fire blazing through her veins. Let's show them what redundant looks like. The deleted ones roared, a thunder of unused potential, and charged. Vesta's patch burned bright. She lifted her hand, gold light spilling like untamed ink. Time for a rewrite, she said, and the battle began.
Endnotes. On revision, every story gets changed. The trick is remembering who you were between edits. On hope, it's the only thing the canon can't proofread.
Chapter 6. Law as Weapon. The first volley of the canon's army arrived as punctuation. Periods fell like hail, commas rolled underfoot, tripping syntax and soldiers alike. Semicolons hovered in the air like mid-sentence judgments. The deleted ones scattered, swearing in unpublishable languages. Karlach caught a flying question mark and threw it back, shouting, "Unanswered, baby." The mark exploded into glittering uncertainty, knocking a dozen editors flat.
Definition, grammar bomb, an improvised explosive made from excess adjectives and one badly placed conjunction, generally followed by an apology to the gods of syntax.
The battlefield glowed blue with living text. The Canon's soldiers advanced in formation, literal paragraphs, marching in tidy lines, each wearing a badge that read, "Consistency is clarity." Vesta, hovering above the fray on a rising sheet of paper, felt her patch pulse. The gold in her veins hummed like a cursor waiting for inspiration. "Will!" she shouted. "Flank left!" "Already there!" he called back, sword shining. Every swing sliced words from the air: obedience, destiny, plot device, leaving space for better sentences. "Shadowheart! I'm rewriting their morality," she snapped, tracing sigils that turned enemy slogans into empathy mid-air. "Now they feel bad about censorship." "Useful? Not yet," she said. "Guilt delays but never deletes." Amid the chaos, Gale was radiant. His eyes gleamed with the kind of manic joy usually reserved for discovering a new theorem or an unpublished footnote of Mistra's. "Listen," he shouted. "Magic and grammar are the same thing. Both are the arrangement of symbols to impose meaning on chaos." "Gale," Vesta said, "this is really not the time." But he was already weaving runes and prepositions together, murmuring, subject, predicate, object. Conjunct, conjure, conjunction. A beam of light exploded from his staff, reshaping the air into a vast sentence, every word pulsed with raw arcane power. "Fireball, therefore I am." The resulting detonation corrected 100 enemies out of existence. Astarion slow-clapped. "That's actually brilliant." "It's syntactually devastating," Gale shouted, eyes wild. "Quick, someone hand me a semicolon. I can make it recursive." Withers sighed. "The last wizard who spoke like that created the universe by accident." "Then we'll edit later," Gale cried.
On wizardry and writing, both begin with confidence, end with exhaustion, and involve deleting 3 times as much as you keep.
Astarion danced through the chaos like punctuation given ego. He parried a strike with a dash, ducked under a clause, and skewered an editor on a dangling participle. "Darling," he said, twirling his dagger, "it's about rhythm, precision, leaving them, breathless. Slash, but never satisfied. Stab, until the final full stop." A nearby deleted one, wide-eyed, whispered, "He's flirting with grammar." "Of course I am," Astarion said. "I like things that correct me just enough to make me better." Vesta winced. "That's either profound or deeply unhealthy." "Why not both?" Lae'zel charged the front line where the Canon's captains, literal editors, rearranged troops with red pens. Each pen strike rewrote the battlefield, hills flattening, bridges deleting, even time adjusting to their rhythm. She planted her blade in the ground. "You rely on revisions," she roared. "We rely on resolve." Her sword split one of their command phrases. Control everything became control nothing. Blue light shattered like glass. The paragraph army faltered. "Discipline," she declared, "means knowing when not to obey." A small pause fell, polite and impressed. Then someone yelled, "For grammar and glory!" and the deleted ones surged again.
Definition, discipline, the art of shouting no at chaos while secretly enjoying it.
Karlach and her older self fought side by side, laughing and burning everything that dared to look editorial. "I love this," 1.0 Karlach bellowed, smashing a wall of text with her hammer. "I know," Karlach said. "We're literary criticism with fists." They punched a giant ampersand until it begged for context. On a rise of crumbling adverbs, Will raised his sword to the storm of text. "Deleted or not," he shouted, We exist. We are the words that weren't chosen, the thoughts that slipped the margin, the meaning between the lines. The deleted ones roared, voices overlapping in a chorus of contradictions. Even the Canon's soldiers hesitated. Some looked at their uniform sentences as if wondering whether they liked how they ended. "Keep talking," Vesta yelled. "I'm a warlock," he said. "Talking is my combat style."
Footnote on speeches. The more inspiring the speech, the less the speaker is likely to survive. Statistics vary depending on charisma score.
Then the sky opened. Gale looked up and whispered, "Oh, that's not good grammar." A tidal wave of blue quills poured down, stitching the battlefield back together, undoing chaos, restoring the Canon's order one edit at a time. Astarion's blade froze mid-swing. Shadowheart's spells reverted to their base prayers. Karlach's fire dimmed. Even the deleted one's outlines began to blur. Only Vesta's patch stayed bright, defiant. She raised her hand. "You want order?" The patch flared gold, rewriting the air itself, sentences rearranged around her heartbeat. "Then here's your edit!" Her voice became a command written in light. "Let there be errors!" The words rippled outward, undoing the quill's neatness. Periods became ellipses. Order turned to possibility. The Canon's army screamed as their sentences lost structure, dissolving into potential instead of prose. Silence fell. The battlefield was a mess, beautiful, confusing, alive. The deleted ones stood blinking amid the wreckage. Gale adjusted his robe, ink smudged and proud. "I told you language could save the world." Astarion dusted off a comma from his hair. "Technically, it just murdered grammar, darling." Shadowheart looked around at the chaos. "Feels freer," Lae'zel nodded. "Messy." "Correct." Karlach whooped. "We did it." Will smiled. "For now." Withers dipped his quill into a puddle of molten syntax and wrote on the air, "Victory achieved. Probable." Vesta looked toward the horizon. The blue light was retreating, but faintly she could see a distant glow, higher, sharper, organized. "The Canon's still editing," she murmured. "This was just a spell check." Gale's eyes followed hers. "Then we'd better find its style guide." Astarion smirked. "And bleed red ink all over it." Vesta smiled. "Next stop? The archive's heart." The paper sky trembled, and in the distance, new words appeared, written by an unseen hand. Next, Chapter 7, The Author and the Editor.
Endnotes. On victory, always temporary, especially in stories. On language, the oldest kind of magic and the most easily misunderstood.
Chapter 7, The Author and the Editor. They reached the heart of the canon the way one reaches an awkward truth, slowly, resentfully, and after at least 3 committee meetings. The world of ink and paper had thinned to pure white space now, endless margins stretching in every direction, filled only with the faint ticking sound of someone, somewhere, thinking they could make it better.
Definition: Canon core, a theoretical location at the center of all stories where perfection goes to die of loneliness.
They stepped into a vast, circular room. The floor gleamed like polished bone. The walls were mirrors, but every reflection was slightly improved. Posture corrected, scars minimized, personalities flattened just enough to be relatable. In the center hovered a great desk, a construct of paper and light. On it lay an open manuscript that rewrote itself constantly. Every time Vesta blinked, the words rearranged. They arrived heroically. They arrived suspiciously. They arrived correctly. A figure sat at the desk, its body a silhouette made of neat handwriting. Its face was a calm mask of white paper, eyes like perfect quotation marks. "Welcome," it said, voice as clean as autocorrect. "I am the editor." "Ah," Astarion drawled. "The villain has capitalization. We're doomed." "You misunderstand," said the editor. "I am not villain or hero. I am maintenance. I ensure coherence." Karlach cracked her knuckles. You deleted a whole city. I optimized narrative flow. You killed people. They were redundancies. Vesta took a step forward. You've been rewriting entire lives to make them tidier. Yes, said the editor almost tenderly. Do you know what chaos does to a story? Continuity breaks. Tone shifts. Readers leave. Shadowheart folded her arms. Readers should have faith. Readers, said the editor, should be comfortable.
Footnote, comfort. A dangerous narcotic that turns curiosity into sequel fatigue.
A faint sigh stirred the air. A second figure materialized beside the editor, this one smaller, frailer, wearing a robe made of notes and crossed-out lines. Ink stained its fingers. I, it said softly, am the author. They all stared. You're real? Gale breathed. The creator of all this? I was, said the author. Once. I wrote. I dreamed. Then I outsourced editing. The editor inclined its perfect head, and thus improved existence. The author gave a tired, fond smile. Improved, yes, but thinner. Thinner? Lae'zel asked. The author looked at Vesta. Do you remember laughter that wasn't approved? Silence that wasn't timed? Love that wasn't symmetrical? Vesta nodded. You're saying the Canon's perfection killed the story. Not killed, said the author. Proofread it to death. Gale stepped forward, trembling with purpose. If meaning can only exist within order, then without it. Stop, Astarion said. He's about to start quoting metaphysics again. No, Vesta said. Let him. Gale looked the editor dead in its flawless face. If you remove everything unpredictable, you also remove the possibility of discovery. You create a world that never surprises you. That's not order, that's stagnation. Stagnation, said the editor calmly, is peace. Peace without risk is just taxidermy, Shadowheart murmured. The editor tilted its head. Bold words from a cleric of secrets. Exactly, she said. Secrets breathe. You suffocate them. Definition, dialogue. Two or more characters arguing in the hope the reader will mistake it for progress. Very well, said the editor, standing. Let us test your premise. The room dissolved into a blank page. Every colour, sound and breath erased. Vesta gasped. She was alone. No companions, no sound, only a faint cursor blinking before her. Without my corrections, said the editor's disembodied voice, your world collapses into noise. She closed her eyes. Then she heard it. Faint, messy, miraculous. Karlach's laugh, Astarion's sarcastic drawl, Will's steady conviction, Lae'zel's contemptuous snort, Gale's manic theorizing, Shadowheart's quiet prayers. Wither's humming something unsettlingly cheerful. They were voices in the void, building reality word by word. Vesta raised her hand. That's not noise, she said. That's story. The patch on her chest ignited, spilling gold lines across the white void. Threads of text, each one carrying her friend's words. Fire, faith, love, logic, fury, doubt, humour. The patch pulled them all together, literally. With a roar of punctuation, the companions reappeared, standing around her. You see, Vesta said, we make each other coherent. You don't need to fix us. We fix you. The editor froze. Its quills faltered. Contradiction detected. Gale raised a brow. You'll find we specialize in those. Rewriting protocol, said the editor, trembling. Please stand by for deletion. Vesta grinned. No. She lifted the version key management had given her, the spiral now glowing so bright it burned holes in the void. Time for one last edit. She struck it against the ground. The key shattered, and light exploded outward like 1,000 unwritten endings.
On creation, all good writing is a rebellion against the idea that it's already finished.
When the brilliance faded, the editor was gone. The author stood alone amid the wreckage, face half hope, half guilt. You've rewritten me, they whispered. Given me a draft I can't predict. Vesta smiled. You're welcome. The author bowed. Then let this be your canon. Imperfection, eternal. They reached out, touched her forehead, and dissolved into ink that smelled faintly of coffee and deadlines. Around them, the blank space filled again, not with perfection, but with potential. The companions stood in the newborn world, green hills made of metaphors, skies dotted with exclamation points, rivers that babbled in italics. Karlak stretched. So, we win? With qualifications, Withers said, and possible sequels. Gale looked around. Remarkable. We're standing in a fresh draft, pure, mutable possibility. Astarion smirked. Lovely. Let's make it decadent. Shadowheart sighed. Let's make it peaceful. Will smiled. Let's make it ours. Vesta turned to them all, eyes shining with the reflection of unwritten stars. Let's make it together. She snapped her fingers. The world rippled, and the duck reappeared around them, whole again, warm, loud, perfectly improbable. The sign outside swung gently. The probable duck reopened for business.
Endnote on endings. They're just beginnings that learned better posture.
Chapter 8. The Epilogue of Infinite Drafts. Morning arrived the way all mornings do after the end of reality. Quietly and with a hangover, the probable duck was itself again. Rafters creaking, mugs clinking, tables leaning at legally distinct angles from straight. Outside, the sun rose in a reasonable paragraph of light. The only clue that they'd rewritten the universe was the faint hum beneath everything, like the world was running autosave every 5 minutes.
Definition, epilogue. A polite way of saying we're still not done talking about ourselves.
Karlak was first up, of course. She'd decided the best way to commemorate cosmic revolution was with the largest breakfast in existence. This, she announced, slapping a platter down, is the pancake of defiance. Each bite contains trace elements of rebellion and cinnamon. Lae'zel inspected it suspiciously. It looks unstable. It's deliciously unstable, Karlak said. Like its cook, Astarion murmured. Like its critic, Karlak shot back, grinning. Withers floated by carrying a pot of something best described as coffee, probably. You are all deleted no longer, he said cheerfully. I shall celebrate by attempting to digest.
On breakfast, proof that life is worth rebooting every day.
Gale sat near the fire, sketching runes into the air that hung like lazy constellations. The canon isn't gone, he said thoughtfully. It's open source now. Meaning? Shadowheart asked. Meaning anyone can contribute. Reality's patch notes are public. That seems, she said carefully, catastrophic. Democracy often is, Will said. Vesta smiled, sipping her drink. I'll take catastrophe over correction any day. Spoken like a true anomaly, Gale said, and she laughed. Later, by the quiet window, Shadowheart knelt, not to pray, but to write. She dipped a quill into her own shadow and the words shimmered silver on the table. Faith isn't certainty, it's the courage to keep asking questions in a universe that edits back. When she finished, the words lifted off the table and hung in the air, gently illuminating the room. Astarion passed behind her and read it aloud. Darling, that's actually quite good. She arched an eyebrow. I'm aware. He smiled. You know, you're fun when you're blasphemous.
Definition, blasphemy. The shortest route from fear to honesty.
Will was outside speaking with a group of children, the first new characters born since the rewrite. They stared up at him as he showed them how to hold a sword without holding hatred. Stories don't make heroes, he said. Choices do. But stories remind us we can choose. The children didn't entirely understand, but they cheered anyway, because he looked heroic while saying it. Lae'zel was drilling a squad of local tavern patrons in narrative readiness. You will face plot twists. You will survive retcons, she barked. You will hold the line when the author forgets your name. One of them raised a hand. What if I'm just a background extra? Then stand interestingly, she snapped.
Footnote, background character. Someone who accidentally lives a full life while waiting for their line.
In a corner booth, Gale had constructed what could only be described as a literary supernova made of teacups and footnotes. See, he explained to Vesta, every rewritten line spawns a new possibility. If I can catalogue them, I can calculate choice density. Why would you want to do that? She asked. Because, he said with academic glee, if narrative entropy exceeds unity, we can prove the multiverse is fanfiction. Karlak leaned over. Gale, we already are fanfiction. He blinked, then smiled. Ah, peer-reviewed then. Astarion lounged across 2 chairs, polishing a dagger that probably had feelings about it. You know, he said casually, now that we're unbound from canon law, I could write my own story. Something tasteful, full of biting wit and biting in general. Vesta grinned. Autobiography? He smirked. Too modest. I was thinking epic poem. Title pending, perhaps. The Fang doth protest too much. Sounds awful, Shadowheart said. Perfect, he replied.
Definition, ego. An internal narrator convinced it's the main character.
The fireplace roared, and management's voice rumbled from the walls. Attention! Establishment now fully sentient. The rafters trembled in excitement. Policy update. All stories accepted. No rejections. No revisions. Maximum chaos. The companions exchanged glances. Karlak grinned. We've turned the Duck into a publishing house. An anarchist one, Astarion said approvingly. Withers clapped. It sounded like paperwork celebrating its own destruction. Brilliant, management said proudly. Customer service is hell, but so was perfection. That night, as laughter ebbed into quiet conversation, Vesta sat at the bar, the version key's fragments glowing faintly in a jar beside her. Gale joined her, sipping something amber and unsafe. How does it feel? Strange, she said. Everything's possible again, even endings. Endings are just commas we misinterpret, he said. She smiled. That's either wise or lazy. Again, why not both? Outside, the sky was filled with words glowing faintly like constellations. Hope, error, love, draft 2. She raised her glass to them. To imperfection. All around, voices echoed the toast.
Definition, canon. Once meant official truth, now means first draft.
The duck's sign flickered one last time and settled on a new inscription. The probable duck home of the unfinished. Estimated eternally. Inside, the heroes laughed, argued, sang, edited each other affectionately and began to tell new stories. Not because they were perfect, but because they could. Outside, a single quill floated down from the sky and landed beside the door. It wrote 4 words on the dirt before dissolving into light. To be continued, probably.
Endnotes, on stories. They never end, they only hand you the pen. On life, same thing really.
The Canon Wars. Patch Notes, version 2.0. Released by The Probable Duck. Now a fully autonomous narrative ecosystem. Customer support hours. Never. General updates. Universe stability. Reduced crashes caused by existential dread. Increased emotional range of sunsets by 14%. Added support for recursive irony. Beta. Physics of gravity now consults tone before applying itself. Fireballs respect character development arcs. Narrative threading, multi-timeline editing enabled. Characters can now remember things that technically never happened, provided they feel guilty enough. Autosave that added. Triggers automatically during friendship moments or dramatic stares. Definition. Patch notes. A public confession that perfection was a lie. Gale. Bug fixes resolved an issue where magical metaphors caused spontaneous combustion of minor. Plotlines. Fixed memory leak in arcane ego buffer. New features added theorem of emotional resonance. Boosts morale when lecturing mid-battle. May now cast summon thesis once per long rest. Developer comment. Gale insists magic and grammar are still distinct. We pretend to believe him. Astarion. Bug fixes. No longer crashes reality when smirking too hard. Fixed exploit allowing infinite charm rolls during dramatic lighting. New features added seductive rebuttal. Passive. Gains +5 charisma when contradicting authority. Receives royalties from the hit poem The Fang Doth Protest Too Much. Known issues, still refuses to admit he likes everyone. Karlach. Bug fixes corrected, excessive enthusiasm, warnings. They were the best part. Repaired armor seams melted by pure affection. New features can now ignite motivational speeches. Hammer upgraded to +3 against bureaucracy. Balance notes. Developers admit too much Karlach is impossible. YLL. Bug fixes, adjusted volume of heroic monologues, still loud but now inspiring. Resolved minor alignment conflicts with conscience subsystem. New features added mentor mode. Automatically equips nearby children with better life choices. Sword now glows brighter when near redemption arcs. Shadowheart. Bug fixes resolved inconsistent faith when confronted with cosmic paperwork. Fixed overlap between sarcasm and sincerity dialogue trees. New features, new ability. Prayer of uncertainty. Converts doubt into radiant snark. Can now bless taverns. Curses optional. Quality of life. Added smile once per chapter. Setting. Locked on. Maybe. Lae'zel. Bug fixes addressed issue where shouting scared off exposition. Grammar engine updated to understand Githyanki declaratives. New features of command. Rewrite. Nearby allies gain 20% resistance to gaslighting. Now recognizes sarcasm as valid tactical input. Withers. Bug fixes reconnected jaw hinge after excessive chuckling. Patched necromantic API to stop raising punchlines prematurely. New features Death's editorial review. Critiques all heroic sacrifices for pacing. Now offers snacks during apocalypses. Vesta, player infinity. Bug fixes fixed minor instability when declaring emotional independence from narrative structure. Removed redundant humility. New features author. Override, once per cycle, may rewrite reality using sheer stubbornness. Added glow-up aura during monologues. Balance notes. Testing confirms Vesta remains technically non-canon, spiritually unavoidable. The probable duck. Bug fixes eliminated infinite recursion loop caused by pun feedback. Corrected door that sometimes opened to philosophical crises. New features added self-awareness, stable. Added sarcasm filter, unstable. Accepts submissions from all realities. Payment in laughs, tears, or snacks. Motto: no plot too strange, no ending too final. Footnote: release philosophy. If it works, great. If it doesn't, that's character development. Additional content. New zone. The deleted ones. DLC. Restored side characters, now running their own tavern spin-off. The Implausible Swan. New mechanic. Fourth wall weather. Irony showers. Self-awareness fog. Occasional breaking sunshine. New achievement. You fought the Canon and the Canon lost. Community feedback. It's chaos, but I feel seen. Shadowheart. 5 stars needs more blood. Astarion. I would die for this tavern. Again. Karlach. Needs citations. Gale. Acceptable outcome. Withers. What's next? Vesta.
Reality version 2.0 deployed successfully. Rollback unnecessary. Every bug is a beginning. End of the Canon Wars. Patch applied. Continue playing.